there really is a green apple up there, a nice big one too," said Miss Settlers Bentel joyfully. Suddenly, her joy turned into shock and fear as she looked at the green apple. "Wait!" she screamed. "Look! Miss Gulch! Look!" "What? What's the matter?" Miss Gulch forcible demanded. "It's growing, Miss Gulch." "Look!" screamed Miss Settlers Bentel. "What is? Is it the tree?" asked Miss Gulch forcible, a slight bit puzzled and nervous. "No, it's the green apple, you fat twit. You look for yourself. Look!" screamed Miss Settlers Bentel. Indeed, it was growing. Soon it was large as a small car and reached halfway to the ground. "What an apple! What a green apple!" Robert gasped in amazement. Soon it was the size of a small cottage and touched the ground by an inch in less than a second. "Look, Settlers Bentel! It's still growing!" screamed Miss Gulch forcible, a slight bit scared. "Who knows when it will stop, you twit? I see it myself!" snapped Miss Settlers Bentel, who was turning white with fright by now, as if she'd seen a ghost or a grim reaper. "Look at it go!" the two nasty ladies screamed in terror. Soon they were screaming like banshees as the green apple went on growing. "This can't be happening!" screamed Miss Gulch forcible in terror. "It's a miracle!" screamed Miss Settlers Bentel in fear. When it was finally as big as a very large house, the gigantic green apple finally stopped growing and the two ladies soon stopped screaming. "Oh, my heavens! My gosh!" gasped Miss Settlers Bentel as she stared on and on at the giant fruit which stood before her, and the rest did the same as well for a full minute. Then, Robert broke the silence and spoke up. "Marvelous things would happen, just like he said." Robert gasped in wonder. "Just look at how tasty it looks so far, it looks so delicious!" cried the mouth-watering Miss Gulch forcible, but before she could taste it, Miss Settlers Bentel stopped her from tasting it. "Stop!" she cried angrily. Then she said to Miss Gulch forcible, "It looks exactly like money." Miss Settlers Bentel hissed greedily. The two nasty ladies could not see the magic of the gigantic apple. They simply saw it as something that would bring them great fortune. So, they both built a huge fence around it and charged thousands of people from near and far admission just to see it. Robert John Westlake, however, was forbidden to go near it. His new job was cleaning up the garbage at night after the crowds had gone home. One night, while picking up the trash alone, he found the paper balloon that the old man had given to him. However, as he lifted it up, a small hole magically appeared in the side of the giant green apple. Soon it started to grow too. Afterwards it was large enough for Robert to crawl through. He crawled into the hole, which led through a dark tunnel. As he did, a magical transformation took place. Without Robert even knowing it, he became a living cartoon. Robert kept on climbing up the dark gushy tunnel. The walls were hard, but wet and sticky, and green apple juice was dripping from the ceiling. As he got closer towards the giant green apple seed inside of the middle of the green apple, He heard voices. They were talking, but who were they? Robert didn't know. However, he could see shadowy figures of mice, a small skog and an enormous spider on the paper wall, which covered the passageway into the seed. Robert was very curious. He leaned forward to get a better look at the shadows on the screen in front of him and tried to touch it. As he did, his other arm slipped on the surface of the green apple and he plummeted into the dark room inside of the seed, as the paper screen ripped loose. Robert had already fallen through the paper screen, as he fell. When he looked up, he found himself surrounded by 5 mice, a little skog and a giant barn spider. "We need food," they cried in a friendly voice as they walked toward Robert. Robert couldn't tell who they were in the dark and was very afraid of them at first. "Please, don't eat me." "Don't be afraid, we wouldn't dream of eating you," said a very kind voice. "Hey, Brisby, turn up your lights," shouted a louder voice. Soon the room was lit up with a bright red light and Robert could finally see who they were at last. There was Basil, the great mouse detective with a violin and a violin bow, a friendly mouse named Wooster, a very kind and loving female mouse named Jenny, a brave and boastful mouse named Bouncer, a small but extremely cowardly little skog, a kind and caring mouse named Mrs. Brisby with a magical stone around her neck on a chain, which lit up the room, and a giant barn spider, on a huge spider web named Charlotte A. Cavatica. "There's no need to be frightened of us at all," said Jenny, trying to comfort the terrified Robert. "But you are enormous creatures," replied the worried Robert, who was starting to cry. "How did you happen to get in here?" demanded Bouncer. "I came in here because I want to leave the hill for good and go with a new family to a different place of love, but I can't because my old family was gobbled up by a mountain lion that's still out there." Robert wept sadly. "I've been so lonely here, with those 2 nasty ladies by my side, but it is better to be loved, than to be abused and treated like dirt every single day." Then, the mice, the skog and Charlotte A. Cavatica realized that Robert John Westlake had to go through the same conflict and abuse that their enemies from their stories passed on to them. "We all know how you feel," said Jenny, drying Robert's tears. The skog tried to comfort Robert. "Don't be sad like this." He wept, holding Robert's hand close to his heart. "I know how to fix this," said Bouncer. "We must leave for good tonight and get out of this revolting place to a better place of happiness forever." "You mean leave the hill?" screamed the skog. "But I'm afraid that mountain lion might kill us all if we leave." "Don't be scared," Robert said, calming the skog in his arms, as if he were a household pet. "I have a plan to get us out of here," he said to his new friends, drying his tears. "What is this escape plan?" asked Bouncer. "We've got to sneak outside of the green apple and cut the stem connecting the green apple to the tree, break the stem and off we go." "That's an excellent idea," declared Bouncer. "Robert, you've done it. That plan and idea is what we need to do," exclaimed Basil as he and Bouncer raced for the nearest ladder, which stood nearby. "Quickly," called Bouncer to Basil. "We've got to cut the stem at once before those 2 nasty ladies see us." "I'm right behind you," "We've got a moment to lose," called Basil. When they both reached the top surface of the giant green apple, the two nasty ladies had already stepped outside of the house to look for Robert. "Where are you hiding, Robert?" snapped Miss Settler's Bentel. "Look at this place, it's still filthy," said Miss Gulch Forcible in disgust. "Where are you, Robert?" called Miss Settler's Bentel. "I think I hear a mountain lion out here," teased Miss Gulch Forcible abusively. Finally, Bouncer and Basil saw the stem connected to the tree and took out a sharp cutting saw from Basil's suitcase which they had brought with them. The two nasty ladies were still searching for Robert, when suddenly, Miss Settler's Bentel heard a cutting sound, like that of a saw cutting through thick wood. "Quiet," she said to Miss Gulch Forcible. "I really do hear something." As they moved closer to the giant green apple to investigate, they heard a very loud snap followed by a very loud rumble. Basil and Bouncer had cut through the stem with their saw. Back Basil and Bouncer raced quickly into the room inside of the green apple. "Get ready to run, everyone. She's going to roll," they screamed to the others when they got back inside. The two nasty ladies soon noticed what was happening and they both screamed. Miss Settler's Bentel cried, "Run for the car," and run for their car they did, still screaming in terror. The green apple began to pick up speed. Robert and his new friends bounced, tumbled, and rolled about like laundry in a dryer. Then, the giant green apple rolled over the car of the two nasty ladies, squashing it like a pancake, but it didn't stop there. It kept on rolling like madness. Finally, Miss Settler's Bentel and the fat Miss Gulch Forcible burst their heads through the roof of their smashed car just in time to see the giant green apple disappear over a huge cliff in mid-air and into the huge sea of the Pacific Ocean itself. "Our green apple!" they screamed. The waves soon pushed the giant green apple far away from dry land. By the time the sun came up, the giant green apple was gone from sight on dry land. Inside the giant green apple, Robert and his new friends lay in a heap upon the floor wondering where on earth they could be. "Hey, Mrs. Brisby, how about some light please?" called Bouncer. "Hold on please," begged Mrs. Brisby. "I have to find the stone first, I had such a fall." Eventually, Mrs. Brisby found the enchanted red stone and soon lit up the room once again. "Help! I'm lying flat on my back," screamed the skog. When Robert got untangled from the heap of his mice friends and Charlotte a Cavatica, he went forward to help the skog to his feet. Soon everyone